Hi, I'm Joshua Curving, and welcome to another Death Battle prediction video, but first, Tatsumaki versus Mob. So that one was a very good episode. Pretty much everything that they went into was, for the most part, as I had predicted. The only thing was that they kind of did lowball some of the stats, likely due to not going into the essentially supercontinent fact for Tatsumaki. With Mob, they basically squeezed everything they could out of him. But yeah, I guess they just didn't feel it necessary, or potentially it might not have just come up during the research phase, but either way, it was more than enough to win. So the animation in particular kind of stuck out as a very, very good part of that episode. Some people were complaining about how it kind of changes art styles, but that's the point. That was kind of the artistic decision that they made for it being similar to 1. With how the art style shifts so much. Like, in the anime, they make this same joke. They do the exact same thing. I just find it weird that they're kind of picking at Death Battle for that one. I thought the entire fight was fantastic. The only thing that I will say is that it seemed really, really lopsided in Mob's favor. And the the animation team even confirmed that on the Death Battle cast, where they were very, very sad when they found out that Tatsumaki won, but they just wanted to make Mob look really, really cool. So he kind of kicked ass throughout the entire fight, and Mob just kind of lost at the end. It was like, for the most part, he was just beating the hell out of her. In particular, seeing reactions to the arm twisting bit is pretty entertaining. That seems to get people cringing. So then we get the next one. I am slightly neutral in reaction to this episode. On the one hand, negative reaction because I really don't like Death Battle's rendition of Deadpool, which is kind of more Takahata than Death Battle, likely. It's kind of just how he plays him. On the other hand, the mask, that's a really, really cool character to toss in. So I think in the end I am kind of excited for this one, because from the previews that we've seen, they've kind of toned him back a little bit in regards to Deadpool, to the point where he's a lot more tolerable. So I think this will be an enjoyable episode at the very least. And then the animation looks pretty stellar so far. So then we get to the actual, who's gonna win. Because these are two essentially immortal beings. So the first thing that you have to go into is, what are they using? Because this is a Marvel character, so there's not too much question there. They're using non-contradictory mainline Deadpool. So for the most part, that gives him a very, very, a set amount of scaling. For example, scaling to Spider-Man. And that should kind of be more or less his top-line stuff. One of the things with Deadpool is actually that his durability is very, very low in comparison to other characters, largely because of the fact of his regen. He relies on it a lot. Basically, he will blow himself up, and whereas another Marvel hero would be all okay from the explosion, he will be in pieces and then reform. Though that does take time, which is kind of a crux of part of this. And then we come to the mask. Now, here's where it does get a little bit more tricky for what's being included. So there are comics, which I believe are the main original source, so I don't see why those would not be used. Then there is the movie, which could get used. I think it would be supplementary material. And then there is the cartoon, which has a lot of other feats as well. And even as far as comics go, there are certain comics, such as a crossover with Batman, and there was also a crossover with Lobo. That's going to be a big one. So I'm going to put this right out there. If the Lobo crossover, if they actually scale him to Lobo, Deadpool's fucked. He can't do anything. He literally has no capacity to even harm the mask at that point. regen that the mask has, be damned, it doesn't matter. He can't even hurt him. So if they include that, then done right there. Because the mask actually does have several ways that he would potentially be able to put Deadpool down for good. As with pretty much all Marvel characters, their regen is actually like a healing factor that can technically be overtaxed. It doesn't really happen for Deadpool very much, but it has been overtaxed before. As of right now in the comics, I believe Deadpool's actually dead. He's in hell, if I recall. Though that may have been a little bit ago. He might be out now. Who knows? Because Thanos has revoked his curse that he had. Which made it so that he could only rely on the healing factor, which was able to be overtaxed. So that kind of paints it in kind of a picture where there is a set limit to Deadpool's immortality, but the masks, there isn't really one. One of the big things is that the mask himself has actually not been killed outright. He will just come back right from it. The only ways that the hosts have really been killed is usually by being tricked into taking the mask off, because that's the only way to take it off, is that the host has to do it themselves to basically separate themselves from it. And at that point they would be killed. And I really don't see that being terribly likely in a fight to the death like this, because that would just be kind of really weird if you... It would be kind of like the Joker versus Sweet Tooth thing, where it would essentially be Deadpool asking nicely, hey, want to take off your mask? And it's like, no, I don't. But, yeah, so back to the stats there. So, if it does include Lobo versus the mask, done. If we include the comics only, technically speaking, it's possible that Deadpool could win, because a lot of the feats in the comics exclusively don't go terribly high. It would be Deadpool having a slight advantage all around, which means that he technically could overpower the mask and press the fight on until the next day. Because the way that it works is that only the cartoon is able to be out during the day. In the comics and the movie, only at night can the mask, he turns back into Stanley Ipkiss the next day. So if he can last that long, he would technically be able to essentially take him out just as his human form, which he would have no chance against Deadpool at that point. And then if they include the comics, you get a ton of other feats, like there was flying out to a meteorite using a jetpack in like 5 seconds or something, and the meteorite was heading towards the Earth, and he like landed on it, was like trying to figure out how to stop it, figured out he couldn't stop it at that moment, flew back to Earth faster than the meteorite, did a ton of things, was basically like going about a day, and then figured out how to stop it, went back and stopped it. So he's absurdly fast. He's got a ton of really, really good feats in the cartoon. And his immortality is just like, there's no real way around it. So at that point it just becomes a matter of the two fight until either morning, and if the cartoons are included, then that doesn't help Deadpool at all, and he just keeps on going until he gets overtaxed and dies. So, yep, I think Death Battle has finally done it. They've killed Deadpool. This is actually a really good fight. I do think that this is probably what, if we only had one Deadpool episode, and by God, I wish we did, this is the one that I would want it to be. But that said, we now have the fact that Deadpool is the only character in Death Battle to have been in 3 mediums. He's been hand-drawn, sprites, and 3D. So now all we have to do is wait for a live-action Deadpool episode, of course. Well, I will see you guys for the next one, which will be the season finale, which I very much look forward to. From what hints we've gotten, it doesn't seem to be on a universal scale, so it's not like Thanos versus Darkseid in that regard, which saddens me, because they had also said that they were working on a Pokemon episode, so I was kind of hoping that it was going to be like Arceus versus Beerus or something like that. That's going to be a good one if they do that. That'll be fun. but unfortunately not. So if I had to guess off the top of my head, with the fact that they said that it was just kind of a fight that a lot of people have really, really wanted for a long time, I'm gonna guess Cole versus Alex for Infamous versus Prototype. The time has kind of passed for that one, but people still want it. A lot of people still really want it. So I will see you for that one if that's the episode for like a really, really short prediction. I'll tell you that much. So I will see you guys then.